Hi guys, Web of this side, and today I want to share with you how to control your mind and really how to disassociate yourself from your thinking patterns and stop these negative thoughts from taking control over you and bothering you and pulling you in all the different direction that you don't want them to, and really how you can stop being identified with every single thought that you have and gain this conscious awareness to reach to the point, get to this state where you can break free from all the torture that your mind and your thoughts impose upon you, and stop being a slave to your mind but rather gain this mastery over it. So without further ado, let's get started. So in this video I want to talk about how to stop your thoughts from controlling your life and gain this conscious awareness of your mental processes. Take control of your mental processes and rise above your mind so that you can choose what kind of thought you would like to energize and what kind of thoughts you want to ignore, and stop them from affecting you, because these thoughts, what they do when they arise, they evoke certain feelings within you, right? When a thought arises, it is always followed by the feeling. Thought comes first and the feeling follows, be it negative or positive, that in turn governs your life experience and create your reality. Negative thought creates this negative feeling, and then your actions are dependent on how you feel. Positive thoughts also creates these positive feelings, but the problem is that all of these thoughts that arises are unconscious. You don't have this conscious say or choice like what thoughts you would like to entertain, you would like to engage, and what thought you would like to de-energize, right? So the goal of this video is to help you gain this conscious awareness around these thoughts and take your power back, right? So first of all, what I want you to know is that the reason our thoughts start to control our experience and control our life is because of our identification with the mind. And what I mean by that is, so think of it this way. What is the mind? The mind is just the collection of all these different thoughts. If you separate the mind from the thought, then there is no mind. What you call your mind is just this collection of these bundles of thoughts that keep arising and keep repeating themselves, right? But the problem occurs when we get identified with the mind and get identified with all the different thoughts that arise in our mind. So to give an example of this, let's say a thought arises that I am not good enough in making videos, or my videos are bad. When this thought arises, notice that I didn't choose this thought. This thought arises without me asking of it, and this thought is projecting whatever it wants to project. And because our thoughts have this power to influence our feeling and our actions, these single thoughts start to persuade me and tempt me to do all sort of different things. I get anxious, and I start to see my YouTube analytics over and over again, and I looking at my analytics, I feel sad and disappointed, and then I had this thought of disappointment, this thought of doubting myself and my abilities, right? And even before I know, I get deep down into this negative loops of thought, and my actions and my experience start to get shaped by this very thought. So notice how a single thought that just arose spontaneously and was projecting something that I didn't choose, but because there was such a great identification with the thought, there was this ownership of this thought, I start to experience what that thought was projecting. I could have simply ignored it by realizing that just because I'm having this thought doesn't mean that it's my thought. I would have let it arise, let it project whatever it's projecting, and allowed it to eventually subside. But because of this identification and ownership of it, not only this thought start to influence my emotion, my feelings, my experience, but it also start to govern my physical action. Some fear arises, some insecurity arise when you are doing something, doing certain things, and these thoughts bring forth all these feelings arising automatically without you consciously choosing them, without you asking of it. But because there is this such a great identification with the mind, with the thoughts, they start to tug you in all different direction and start to color and influence your experience, your action and your reality. Now, the mistake a lot of people make when a negative thought arises is they start to resist this negative thought. And this takes them to this negative loop of hell. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say I have this thought that my videos are bad. And then I start to thinking that, I started resisting this thought. I started thinking like, oh, I should not feel this thought. Why I am feeling this thought? How can I have this thought? I don't want to have this negative thought. So now I am having this negative thought toward this negative thought, right? And then another negative sub thought arises and I start to resist that as well. Then some other negative thought arises and I start to resist that as well. And before I know, I am in this deep overthinking state where I am so much caught up in my mind that I start to feel overwhelmed and frustrated. What we don't understand is that the thought is just a thought. It rises out of nothing and it vanishes into nothing. This is just the mind, this is just what the mind does. It simply thinks. But the moment you engage with the thought and you start to entertain it and you start to resist it, notice even if you are resisting the thought, you are still engaging with it, because a thought doesn't have a life of its own. It doesn't have an existence of its own. It needs to borrow its existence from you, from your reality. It needs to borrow life, from you, which it seeks through attention and engagement. The moment you stop feeding it your attention and your engagement, thought collapses and dissolves into nothingness. But because we are unconscious and because we get unconsciously identified with this voice, this becomes my voice. It becomes my thought. And now this thought quite literally start taking the life and shape of its own. And the projection of this thought becomes your experience of life, right? Now, what I want you to realize is that because you can see and observe your thought, it means you are not your thoughts. Because if I can say that I am thinking this thought and I have this awareness that I am thinking this thought, it means there is something beyond, something even subtler than the thought that can observe this thought. Thought itself is very subtle, right? You cannot sense it with your five senses. So if there is something that can observe the thought, it means it has to be subtler than the thought itself. There is something beyond the thought that is witnessing this thought. The mind cannot witness the thought because the mind is the thought. If I say I can observe the thought, it means I am not the thought. If I can say I can observe, my body, it means I am not the body. There is something beyond mind and body that can observe and witness the mind. Do you see what I mean? So just take a pause and observe what are the thoughts that are running in your mind. Just observe what next thought that is going to pop up in your mind and simply see the movement of this thought. See how this thought arises from nothingness and move around and subsides into nothingness. What is it that is observing this thought? Who is it that is, witnessing it? So if the mind cannot observe the thought, it means there is something that is observing it, which is beyond the mind. And this is closer to something that we call awareness or consciousness. So if this is your mind and thoughts occurs in your mind, and if this is your body, and we have feelings predominantly that occurs in our body, then there is this awareness that is sitting beyond the body and the mind and witnessing them. The moment we get identified with the thought, aka the mind, the attention of the awareness gets tied up with the mind, or awareness gets identified with the mind. Then this awareness becomes the mind. When we get identified with the feeling, aka body, the attention of the awareness gets tied up with the body or the feeling, or awareness gets identified with the body, right? Then the awareness becomes the body. I know it's getting a little complex, but just bear with me for a moment. So if I have to give you an analogy to this, let's suppose, this is the sky. So awareness is just like the sky. And then we have these clouds. And these are the thoughts. When we let these clouds take over the sky becomes the cloud. I hope that makes sense. But that doesn't mean that sky isn't there. It is just now identified with the clouds. When the clouds subside, the sky becomes clearer again. The sky is the one that encapsulating all these clouds. In the very same way, when you stop this identification with the thought and simply start observing them, you start to dissolve this identification. These clouds subsides and the sky become clearer again. So a simple exercise that you can do and start practicing to really connect back to this awareness and not get attached to your thought is to simply start observing your thoughts without getting attached to them. So when a thought arises, rather than getting influenced and moved by it, just be present, be conscious, and watch what arises in the mind. That's it. You don't have to do much. Just be the silent witness and see what comes up and watch it dispassionately without being interested in what comes up, rather than being interested in the fact that you are the one who is watching and witnessing. When you do that, now you are just this pure awareness. You are the observer. Whatever this thought is projecting, don't make it a problem regardless of what it is. Don't allow it to color your experience, and don't engage in any drama, and also do not resist what is arising. Even if you have a painful thought, fearful thought, allow it to be what it is and let it stay as long as it wants. Just simply acknowledge that you are observing it, you are witnessing it, and you are aware of it. It's kind of like when you watch TV. So let's say you are watching Animal Planet and there is this leopard killing its prey. Or let's say you are watching a movie and there is this some negative sequence playing out. But you don't make a drama out of it, right? You don't make it your problem because you are the one who is watching. In the very same way, simply watch your mind, watch your thoughts, and don't make a drama out of it. Just dispassionately observe these thoughts without attaching any feeling, without attaching any identification, without attaching any ownership, without attaching any judgment, without attaching any reaction. Just allow what it is to be as it is. Be the seeing. Acknowledge yourself as the seeing and rest in this state. Rest as the witness of what occurs, and then these thoughts will no longer have the power to pull you in its projection and color your experience. So start small. Try to do it for a few minutes initially. If you want, you can include it as a practice during your meditation. Sitting for 10 to 15 minutes and silently watching your mind, watching your thoughts. And over time, you will start to realize that these thoughts will start to dissolve and you will start to get mastery over your mind. You will learn to be with the mind without reacting to it, right? And with that, I'm concluding this video. Leave me a comment down below to let me know if that is useful or if you have anything to ask. I will be more than happy to answer them. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, much love and peace.